Hey guys, Jesse here. Welcome to my channel where I talk all about domain format. I'm coming to you with my second deck tech. I guess you guys call them deck profiles, huh? This deck will emphasize something that I think is much more important in domain format than it is 1v1. But it's not that it's more important, but more difficult to do. And that being holding up interaction on during all three of your opponent's turns and abusing the fact that there are 4 players to activate cards that can only be activated once per turn 4 times before it gets back to your turn. Whereas typically in 1v1, you get activated twice. So I'm excited to get into that and talk about those aspects with this deck. Before I do, there's some stuff I gotta plug. If you do not know what domain format is, you can check out my video on how to play. I also have an FAQ video. Some people have some questions when they hear about it. If you want some deck ideas for domain list, you can look in the description for my Yugioh pro deck. I have all my lists there. And if you're interested in trying to find people to play with, to brew decks, get help building a deck, you can join the Discord down below. The Discord is growing quite steadily. To celebrate hitting our first achievement of hitting 100 members, the mods over at domain format are going to be doing a giveaway each week, some sort of raffle giveaway each week during the month of December. The details still got to be ironed out, but they're excited to do it. If you want to get in on that fun, you can join the Discord, be part of that. So yes, this deck mixes 2 archetypes that I thought would have quite the advantage in domain, that being Witchcrafters holding up interaction during my opponent's turn, and Dragonmaids activating each turn during every battle phase to get me more card advantage than they usually would per turn cycle. So who did I pick as the deck master? Here I got Mysterion. Mysterion is a light spellcaster, level 8 fusion. He's got 3k attack, 1500 defense. The important part is he takes a spellcaster and a dragon for his fusion material, so his domain allows me light dragon spellcasters. He loses attack for each of your banished cards, but that's not important. The cool thing though is that basically whenever a monster gets special summoned, he can banish all monsters with the same type. Obviously in domain format, people are most likely going to have one overarching type to their monsters, so this guy can clear boards. But again, he is not the main focus of the deck. He is just there for some kind of as a threat and to give me the domain that I'm looking for. First, I'll start off with the generic card. These are the auto includes, in my opinion, for removal. These are extenders. Reasoning is really good because Witchcrafters want their Witchcrafter spells in the graveyard. This can mill cards until you hit a monster. Last Will is bonkers. Again, auto includes for being the best draw spells in the game. These here are part of what I think everybody should consider. If you watch my last deck profile, recursion is very important for domain. These cards grab cards out of the graveyard, shuffle back in. Pot of Acquisitiveness grabs banished cards, which the Witchcrafters banish themselves, so that's useful. I got my favorite Mirror Force in here just for 1 defensive option, and then I got some burial cards. Painful Choice, absolutely bonkers. Throw 5 Witchcrafter spells in the graveyard and have a ball. Just go to town. Foolish Burial, good for the Dragonmaids because they need the big dragons. They can transform into the big dragons from hand or graveyard. And Foolish Burial goods, again, Witchcrafters want their spells in the graveyard. Since Mysterion is the deck master, I wanted to have a pretty reliable way of getting poly. The Dragonmaid fusion spell cannot fusion summon Mysterion because it has to be a dragon type monster, but the Witchcrafter fusion spell can. But I still wanted to throw in Fusion Recycling Plant because if you've never played with this in domain in a fusion focused deck, it allows you to send cards to the graveyard to throw polymerization into your hand, which can be useful in 2 ways. 1, it gets you poly. 2, it can send useful things to the graveyard. In this deck, that being the Witchcrafter spells and the bigger dragon forms for the Dragonmaid. And then each time you fusion summon, you can return one of the fusion materials to your hand from the graveyard at the end of the turn. Terraforming and Metaverse, just because it is really important, again, to get Fusion Recycling Plant for me in this deck. I don't have any other field spells. Witchcrafter and Dragonmaids don't have a field spell, but it's just so important. I'm still going to run these even if after getting it. The nice thing about getting Fusion Recycling Plant out is that I can discard these to get poly from my deck or graveyard, so they're not completely dead. These are just some hand traps I got. I've really been liking these. I really hope they make more dragon type hand trap cards. They're pretty cool. And honestly, the more hand traps in the format, the better. Real quick side note, I do want to do a video going over, I want to try and find 60 hand traps that can be played in domain because a lot of people are worried about they can't run 3 Ash, so they feel like that this game's just FTK hell, which is not the case. So I know people still want to play things like hand traps, so I want to make a video compiling at the time the best. Try and find 60 hand traps so that you can find as many as you want to play as possible. If that sounds interesting, leave a comment. I'll make sure to get back to everybody who comments. But yeah, there's even more I could play, but I haven't really messed with this deck too much. Summoner Monk is here purely because the first time I played this deck, it had an issue with not getting any of the small smaller Witchcrafter starters or the smaller Dragonmaid starters. So he is there because he can get either Shemitah or Chamber Dragonmaid. Both of those can start either of the deck archetypes plays. And again, discarding a spell in this deck is good because I can almost always discard a Witchcrafter spell, get it back. All right, so if you are not familiar with the Witchcrafter shtick, their gimmick, they are all spellcasters that range across all 6 attributes, and their game plan is all the smaller Witchcrafters are their starters. They all have this ability of discard a spell, tribute it, and go search for any Witchcrafter monster and put it into play, special summon it. And this is a quick effect, which is nice because it allows you to be reactive to what your opponent is doing. Now, what do they let you go into to react with? Adele can quick effect special summon more Witchcrafters out of your hand. She can also tribute herself to bring back spellcaster from the graveyard. Hain can discard a spell card to destroy a card on the field. She also prevents your other spellcasters from being targeted. Vere is kind of was originally the boss monster of the deck. She has 2000 defense, and whenever any spellcaster monster battles, you can reveal X number of spells in your hand to pump up the spellcaster by 1000 attack and defense for each. And also, if you don't know, all the Witchcrafter spells have 2 effects. One is their first effect, which this Monster Reborn's one. Search for a Witchcrafter, special from hand, bounce spell traps, double attack, protect your spellcasters, draw a card when a spellcaster destroys a monster by battle. Other than that, their other ability is if you didn't activate it this turn, at the end of your turn, you can return it to your hand. So you can bring back quite a few cards at the end of your own turn while these are in your graveyard, and they're used as fuel to activate these Witchcrafters. They also kind of have a big body hand trap. Whenever your Witchcrafters get targeted by a spell, by an effect, or targeted for an attack, you can special summon her into play, target one card your opponent controls, or a Witchcrafter card in your graveyard, and return that target to your hand. And then she returns herself to your hand at the end of your turn to be used again on their turn. They just recently got some support with their own fusion spell to get Vice Master, and Vice Master is pretty nutty. She has 3 separate effects that can be used each turn whenever you activate a spell or a spellcaster effect. 1 being destroy a card, 2 being return a Witchcrafter spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand, and 3 special summoning a Witchcrafter, level 6 or lower Witchcrafter from your deck. All this can happen off of activating these by tributing them, activating any of these effects, or activating any of your Witchcrafter spells. Also, the smaller Witchcrafters have abilities in the graveyard. You can banish themselves to do something. This Foolish Burial is a Witchcrafter spell. They all do something, which can also, again, activate Vice Master. So summoning just one of these offers you a lot of interaction on your opponent's turn. They contribute themselves to go into removal, getting more board presence, negates, and floating a hand trap into your hand. And all these cards that you use or discard to activate these effects on your next turn will be all brought back to your hand so that you can use them again, either for their effects or to activate these. It's honestly really fun. All right, and lastly, and what I would argue is most of the action in each of the games that I play with this deck are the Dragonmaids. If you're unfamiliar with the Dragonmaid gimmick, there are 5 lower star monsters. All of them have on summon effect. She Foolish Burial is a Dragonmaid card. She adds a Dragonmaid monster to your hand. She can return a small Dragonmaid from your graveyard to play. She mills 3 cards, and she searches for a Dragonmaid spell or trap. The other ability they all have is that at the beginning of the battle phase, you can return them to your hand to special summon the appropriate larger Dragonmaid from your hand or graveyard. I take advantage of the from graveyard. I'll explain later. The larger dragons, they don't have any into the battlefield effects or anything, but they all have hand effects. They can all be discarded from the hand. 2 of them are quick effects and 2 of them are not. This is a 2000 attack buff. This can shuffle a monster from a graveyard into the deck, in either graveyard, I should say. This can quick effect special summon a small Dragonmaid from your hand. This can non-quick effect, target 1 monster on the field, and nobody can activate its effects this turn. So it kind of forces them to use it then and there. And then when they're discarded to the graveyard, these Dragonmaids can transform into them, and then these will bounce back to your hand to re-special summon these, which will activate their effects if they didn't get to yet. And this happens every battle phase, on your battle phase and on each of your 3 opponents' battle phases. Typically in a 1v1 game, you would only be able to activate this twice during each turn rotation. In domain format, you can do that 4 times and get much more advantage per turn rotation. And they kind of naturally built in protect themselves from medium-sized monsters by changing into medium-sized monsters themselves, all the while adding more Dragonmaids to your hand, sending stuff to the graveyard. It's quite fun, actually. Chamber Dragonmaid is the play starter, really, because in my games I'll go get Dragonmaid Downtime, which is a continuous trap that can also be activated on each turn or each player's turn, so 4 times per cycle. It says you can bounce a Dragonmaid back, so I'll play her, get this, set it, activate it on my opponent's turn, bounce her back to my hand, and when you do that, you can either return any spell or trap your opponent controls back to their hand, or go search for any Dragonmaid card and put it in your hand. So bounce her to the hand with it, go get Ernest. Ernest can quick effect discard itself to special summon her. Battle phase happens, she bounces back to your hand, specials Ernest from the graveyard. Oh, I forgot to say, you'll get a search off of Chamber Dragonmaid, special summon her. You can go search for a spell or trap, which can be the fusion, the Foolish Burial for Dragonmaids, or the bouncing removal that with Dragonmaid Tidying, which you can get back over and over again with Dragonmaid Welcome. So just Chamber Dragonmaid opens up tons of plays. After you special summon Ernest, it can't bounce back to your hand because this isn't level 2, but on the next turn you can use this, bounce this back, and go get one of the Dragonmaids that it can turn into, so that you can discard her, special Chamber Dragonmaid activates, or battle phase happens, she bounces back to hand to special summon Ernest from the graveyard, and then at the end of the turn this will come back to special summon whichever level 2 Dragonmaid you got. And it's just a really good engine that really gets going, which compounds even more when you consider the extra deck Dragonmaid. This guy returns any Dragonmaid to play each standby phase from the graveyard, from your hand or graveyard, and he's also got a negate built in. He shuffles himself back into the deck to be summoned again and brings out House Dragonmaid. You kind of have to work a little bit harder to get certain Dragonmaids in play, but she can for the most part get any Dragonmaid back in play each standby phase, again from hand or graveyard. And whenever any Dragonmaid is bounced back to your hand, she can destroy one of your opponent's monsters. So these all can be triggering and activating each and every single turn, and you're basically playing on each opponent's turn, which gets annoying to them, but if you play at a good pace, then it shouldn't be that big of a deal. So that's basically the meat and potatoes of what happens every single game with this deck. Is I go through all that Dragonmaid shenanigans, and it's really fun. It's not like super oppressive. I'm just doing things every single turn. There are some cool plays, some cool interactions that maybe not everybody has heard of. Dark Factory of More Production is a card that could go into a lot of decks really, but it's a continuous trap that you can activate again 4 times per cycle, once per turn. You can send any monster from your hand or field to the graveyard to draw a card. Now this is really good in this deck because you can discard the larger Dragonmaids to draw an extra card, and then the smaller Dragonmaids will bring them back from the graveyard, and then at the end of the battle phase, they bounce back and re-special summon these. Then next turn, activate this again. This can draw you 4 cards per turn cycle. It's quite awesome. Another card that can draw you lots of cards. Each time a monster is special summoned from your hand to your field, you get to draw a card. This is once per turn. And then at the end of your own turn, if you didn't draw a card up with this card's effect, you destroy it. Again, in this deck, not hard to keep up whatsoever. And the fact that it doesn't destroy itself at the end of each turn is cool because you only have to worry about that on your own turn. But again, you can draw one on your turn, your first opponent's turn, second opponent's turn, and third opponent's turn. So this can also draw you 4 cards per rotation. And then this card, hilariously enough, can gain you a ton of life. It's called Spring of Rebirth, and you gain 500 life points each time a monster is returned from the field to its owner's hand. It doesn't have to be yours. That doesn't happen too often with other archetypes, but in this archetype, it happens literally every turn cycle, multiple times. I just put this in, so I'm really excited to play with it. Oh, there's another card I should put in. So one of our Discord members played a game with us, and they were also playing Witchcrafters. He did a really good job. He played Spell Absorption and gained just ridiculous amounts of life. The entire game, he was in the lead in life points, and he combined it with a Skull Invitation and just let everybody slowly grind themselves down into a losing position. It was down to me and him, and I only barely won. It was really impressive. It was really fun to play with him. We like to play, we try and play as many games as we can on the Discord, to be honest, and the more people that are joining, the more it can happen. We play remote duels with our webcams up, or we use a simulator like Untap, which can have 4 players. We also just got tabletop running. DK just in his spare time just got it up and running because he freaking loves this game and wants more people to play. So if you like to play on Tabletop Simulator, check out, you can look for it in the Discord, and DK got it set up. It's quite impressive. If I had to try and name like the weaknesses or the weak points of the deck, the good thing is that it functions quite well. All those things I was mentioning happen almost every game. I'm taking way more actions than most people. If I had to, thinking back now on certain games, when things start getting banished by my opponent's spells or cards, getting these back from banish is pretty difficult. I only have a couple cards that can do that in the deck. Maybe I should put in more, but yeah, I would say that's the main weakness of this deck, is if they start banishing a bunch of your cards, it's really unfortunate. So if you were wanting to do something similar to this, maybe look into options about bringing back banish cards. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I guess another one is that having a fusion monster as my deck master, if I don't get any way to fusion summon, I have one less play than my opponent. There have been times where the first couple turns in a game I wasn't doing much because I guess I just, you know, draw Dragonmaid spells and Witchcrafter spells, which don't do anything without any of the Dragonmaids or Witchcrafters. But this deck's really fun. And if you couldn't tell, I printed out like 99% of it. Obviously, ask your friends if it's okay to play proxies, but I think this is a really good way to try and play more decks than before you buy them. But yeah, that was my Mysterion Witchcrafter Dragonmaid deck. Was I missing any glaring auto includes that you guys can think of? Are there any other archetypes you guys can think of that would have as many interaction on each turn or effects that can be abused because there's 4 opponents? Tell me down in the comments below. I would love to hear about them. I'm still learning about a lot of archetypes myself. And again, if deck building is your thing, I really think Domain is an amazing format specifically for deck building because of the domain restrictions, the singleton nature, the 4-player games. It's just, there's nothing else like it. This is the most fun I've had playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Since ever. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out the Discord. You can join, talk with us. I plan on doing more of these. These are fun. Leave a like. It's free. Helps me out. Until next time, thank you for watching.